Happy Sunday, everybody. Welcome in for another episode of the Lions Grid. Flying solo again today, but going to walk you through both mine and Joe's picks here for the Week 6 NFL matchups. And before we dive into that, just want to update everybody on our Pick'em records, the standings here as we're heading into Week 6. Currently sitting at, after 5 weeks of Pick'em, Joe with a 46-32 record. I'm currently sitting at a 48-30 record, so a 2-game lead in my advantage, but it has been very neck and neck these last couple of weeks. But yeah, still holding out there. So with that out of the way, let's jump into the picks for this week, starting with the picks we've already revealed. Of course, on Thursday Night Football, both went with the Patriots, and luckily the Patriots were playing the Giants, and it was a little iffy, a little dicey there in the first quarter, but the final score there, 35-14 in favor of the Patriots, picking me up my first Thursday Night Football prediction of the season. Up until then, I had been 0-5, so finally on the board there for me, and I think this is 3 weeks in a row for Joe with the correct pick there on Thursday night. Of course, when you have the Patriots playing, it makes it a little bit easier. Of course, the game that's going on currently over in England, both Joe and I going with the Panthers in that game. The Panthers taking on, of course, Tampa Bay, who is the home team in that London game. The Panthers currently in the lead with the ball, 37-26, with about just under 5 minutes left to go in the fourth quarter of that game. So Tampa Bay has been surging a little bit, but hopefully we'll be able to hold on there and improve that Carolina pick to be correct. But certainly something to keep an eye on. Moving into today's 1 o'clock games. First up, we have the Battle of the Tank Bowl, which is the Washington Redskins traveling to Miami to play the Dolphins. Both Joe and I going with Washington in this game. Yes, they just fired Jay Gruden, but throughout the season, they have been the closest team to actually pulling off a victory, even though they're both still looking for their first wins on the season. They definitely seem like they have more talent because the Dolphins traded away a lot of their talent. It just seems like Washington should be able to get that win. They do seem like they're the better team of these two teams that aren't very good. Of course, this could be an important game in deciding the draft order come next spring, but we're both liking Washington to go into Miami and get this win today. Moving on to the matchup between the New Orleans Saints and the Jacksonville Jaguars. Both me and Joe going with the away teams in today's matchup. Jacksonville is a tough opponent. Don't let that get I don't want to write them off completely, but I think, for both of us, the Saints are up there in our power rankings. We think they're a very good team. They've shown, even without Drew Brees at the helm, that they can get things done. So with that in mind, the Saints should get the win, but Jacksonville is not an easy out. So I would it's certainly a game I would tread lightly on if I was the Saints because, again, Jacksonville is a tough opponent. In the AFC North matchup between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Baltimore Ravens, both Joe and I going with the home team, the Ravens, in that matchup between division rivals. Baltimore's kind of been on a bit of a losing streak here. Look for them to get back on track against the winless Bengals. Should be a fairly easy win for the Ravens. Taking a look at the Seahawks, who will be traveling to play the Cleveland Browns. Going with the Seahawks in this game, the Browns have definitely been one of those teams that have been very up and down. They're very hard to get a gauge on. You never really know what sort of team is going to be coming through that tunnel every week. But the Seahawks certainly been more consistent. Russell Wilson has been, I want to say he's the highest rated QB for most of the metrics at the moment in terms of his passer rating and things like that. So he's been looking very sharp behind center for the Seahawks. That Browns deep offensive line has also been very suspect. So I would imagine that Jadeveon Clowney and that Seahawks defense could certainly take advantage of that, because we saw last week when the Browns played the 49ers on Monday Night Football, very much a struggle for the Browns in that game. So I think the Seahawks have all the tools offensively and defensively there to take care of business today in Cleveland. The next game up, and this is the first game where our picks differ between me and Joe. We have the Philadelphia Eagles traveling to Minnesota to take on the Vikings. And in this game, Joe is going with the Eagles. I am going with the home team, the Vikings, here. Now, from my perspective, the Eagles certainly did go on the road and get a win against Green Bay. And so I definitely think there is a chance that the Eagles can get this win. I don't think that the Eagles are a bad team by any stretch of the imagination. I just think that their secondary is certainly vulnerable. Of course, the strength of the Vikings so far has been their rushing attack with Delvin Cook, and the strength of the Eagles' defense has been their run stopping. So you're going to have a mashup of those two strengths. However, I think that especially after last week when Adam Thielen and Kirk Cousins got things figured out and they placed an emphasis in that passing game, I'd expect them to continue to keep Thielen involved this week, as well as try and get Stephon Diggs more involved. And that Eagles secondary is certainly more vulnerable to the passing attack. So I like the Vikings in this one. Their defense is also very good. So I'm going with the Vikings. Joe's going with the Eagles. Should be a pretty good game here in that 1 o'clock slot. Now, the next game is actually my pick for game of the week. It is another matchup here between two very good teams. The Houston Texans traveling to Kansas City to take on the Chiefs. Again, me and Joe split here. Joe's going with the Chiefs. I am going to go ahead and risk it for the biscuit and go with the Texans. The Texans, of course, are my pick to represent the AFC in the Super Bowl. Really, I would have gone with the Chiefs. I think if last week the Colts hadn't been able to go into Arrowhead and get the win against the Chiefs, the Colts there showed. Typically, I think of Arrowhead as being a place where teams have a very low chance of winning, but it starts with what the Lions did against the Chiefs 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago at this point, however that works out, showing that the Chiefs are vulnerable. The Colts showing that they can be beaten in Arrowhead. I like the Texans. They have been a little bit inconsistent, and this is certainly a big game. So I'm hoping that they're going to show me something in this game. That might just be wishful thinking, and of course we'll see what the result is on the field. But I like the Texans in this one. Again, I think the Lions sort of showed how you can make things difficult for Patrick Mahomes and that Chiefs offense by playing man instead of zone. They do get Tyreek Hill back, but I'm not expecting him to be in, peak condition and in prime season form. So I think the Texans are catching them at just the right time. Showed they can be beaten at home against the Colts last week. Kind of hard to imagine the Chiefs dropping back-to-back games, especially in Arrowhead. But like I said, gonna put my neck out there on the line and go with the Texans in this game. Certainly a bit of a risk, but we'll have to see what Deshaun Watson and team can do there. Because again, Kansas City's defense is not the greatest, so certainly an opportunity for that offense to be successful. The next game up is the first of today's 4 o'clock games. We have the Atlanta Falcons traveling to Arizona to play the Cardinals. Both Joe and I going with the Falcons in this game. Doesn't mean it's a for certain done deal by any stretch of the imagination. Of course, the Cardinals not having a great season, but they have been able to find some success with Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray. Of course, the weakness for the Falcons has really been their defense and their offense not being able to keep pace. The Cardinals only have 1 win on the season. I think the Falcons should get the win, but this is kind of a game where I kind of have a bad feeling in my stomach. Of course, the Falcons only have 1 win too, so it's really. I think this game could go either way, but I think the Falcons should get the win. If the Falcons don't get the win, I think Dan Quinn, the head coach there for the Falcons, who's probably already in a bit of trouble in terms of job security, I think dropping a game here to the Cardinals could be even more detrimental. And I wouldn't say he'd get fired after the game with a loss, but it may speed up his exit from the team. Looking at our next game, it's going to be the first real test of the season for San Francisco. A lot of the teams they've beaten so far to be 4-0 have been teams with losing records. So this week they're going to travel to Los Angeles to take on the Rams. And in this game, another split decision. Joe's going with the Rams, of course, the reigning champions of the NFC West. I am going with the 49ers to get this win against their divisional opponent. Should be a very good game. Of course, San Francisco, as I mentioned last week, looked very good against the Browns. That front seven looked very good on defense, and then offensively they do a very good job of running the ball. And I've liked what I've seen out of San Francisco so far. Again, my only concern, my only issue is that they have played teams that, again, all have losing records, and they've gotten the wins there, but this will be much more of a test for them here today against the Rams. But I've liked what I've seen from them so far, so I will stick with them here as they take on their first true test of the season. This is going to be a very interesting game to see if the 49ers are for real or not, because like I said, this is their first real test of the season. Next up, we're both going with the Titans in their matchup with the Denver Broncos. Of course, I think as of yet, neither Joe nor myself has been able to successfully predict a game that has involved the Titans. Anytime we've gone with the Titans, we have gotten it wrong. So keep this pick with a grain of salt, because it's never easy to go into Mile High and play the Denver Broncos. That's one of the few stadiums where they actually have a physical home field advantage because of the altitude difference there. But we're both going with the Titans. We'll have to see. Of course, the Broncos did get a win last week, but the word out of Denver was, of course, if they continue to lose, pretty much everybody was available for trades. And when you have a team putting that out there, broadcasting that doesn't give you a whole lot of confidence in them. So we'll go with the Titans. But again, I'm pretty sure anytime Joe or I has gone with the Titans, that outcome of the game hasn't gone our way. So keep that in mind. It might just be similar to our Thursday night curse, just a Titans curse. Both going with the Dallas Cowboys, who will be traveling to take on the Jets. Could be kind of an interesting game here. I think we're both feeling pretty confident with the Cowboys pick. Just because I don't think the Jets will be able to hop out to the lead that the Packers were able to and then be able to continuously apply pressure to the Cowboys. But Aaron Jones did find a lot of success on the ground for the Packers last week when they squared off or against the Cowboys when they played the Packers last week. And of course this week, taking on the Jets, they will be playing Le'Veon Bell, so another very capable running back. But again, I just don't think that the Jets will be able to get out to a lead and force the Cowboys to constantly be throwing the ball and abandon what they do well, which is run the ball. So should be a pretty easy game for the Cowboys to win. This is Sam Darnold's first game back under center for the Jets, but I think the Cowboys should rebound after a couple of losses here in back-to-back weeks. For the Sunday night football game, it is the Pittsburgh Steelers traveling out to LA to take on the Chargers. Both Joe and I going with the Chargers in this game. And of course, this is not a done deal by any stretch of the imagination either. The Chargers are a team that has been very depleted by injuries. So it's kind of, they're definitely not at full strength by any stretch of the imagination. So, but I really haven't liked too much what I've seen out of the Steelers. Offensively, they just don't seem to be able to keep pace with other teams. And so, going with the Chargers in this one. But again, this game certainly could go the other way. And I would not be surprised if the Steelers did get a win. The fact that it is at home just helped me go with the Chargers in this one. For Monday Night Football, of course, it's the game we've been talking about all week here on the Lions Grid. We have the Lions traveling to Green Bay to take on the Packers at Lambeau. Joe is going to go with the Lions in this game. I'm going to go with the Packers. Really, the Packers, they're the number one team in the NFC North currently in the standings. They're the number one team from the NFC North in mine and Joe's power rankings. Considering they are at the top, I have them at the top until they're beaten. And so certainly the Lions, could they go into Lambeau and get a win? Yes, they could. They've shown the last 2 seasons they can go into Lambeau and get a win. That being said, until they do it this season, if you're asking me who I'm picking, I'm going to go with the Packers because, again, I think they have been the best team so far in the NFC North. And until the Lions actually beat them, I think the Packers are the way to go. So put me down for Green Bay. Joe is going with the Lions. Of course, we will be coming back to you with an episode tomorrow for a pregame, doing a little bit of a deeper dive into that matchup between those two teams. So if you're interested in that, make sure you subscribe to the channel and also ring that bell so you get an alert when that video is going live. If you did enjoy today's show, please do help the channel grow. Of course, as I mentioned, subscribing is a good way to do that, but you can also like this video. Both of those things really do help us out, and we do appreciate it. That's going to be it for me here on this Sunday morning. Still time left in that Carolina-Tampa Bay game. Carolina does have the ball. Looks like they're at the 2-minute warning in the fourth quarter. Still 37-26 there. But again, the rest of the games will be kicking off here shortly. It's 12:54, so kickoff for the 1 o'clock games just a few moments away. So without any further ado, I will bid you all farewell today. Enjoy your NFL football, and we'll catch you during tomorrow's pregame episode where we take, that deep dive into the Lions-Packers matchup on Monday Night Football. Until then, I'm Kevin Marheine. See ya.